Your community just hired a vendor. Work starts on Monday. Do you have their insurance? Do you have their W-9? And if you don't, do you actually know what that exposure looks like for your board? Here's the question we get from boards all the time. Does vendor documentation need to be in hand before a vendor mobilizes, before an invoice comes in? Or is it okay to collect as the invoice arrives? The honest answer is it depends, and how you answer that question says a lot about how your community manages risk. In a perfect world, you have a current certificate of insurance and a signed W-9 before a vendor sets foot on the property. That's the standard. But communities are dynamic, situations are dynamic. A pipe bursts at 11 p.m. on a Saturday. A tree comes down across the main drive after a storm. You're not turning away an emergency vendor because their paperwork isn't in your system yet. The real question isn't whether the documentation is perfect, it's whether your management team has a documented process for getting it in place promptly and tracking it once it is. That process and the discipline behind it is what protects your community. The absence of it is where the real liability lives. Let's say a vendor submits their certificate of insurance in good faith. You file it, a year goes by, they haven't been back on the property, their certificate expires. Now what? This is where vendor compliance gets genuinely complicated. Do you reach out repeatedly asking for an updated certificate from a vendor you haven't used in 2 years? Is that reasonable? Is it realistic? And what does it do to your relationship with quality vendors in your market when you're treating a welding company that fixed a mailbox 3 years ago the same way you're treating your landscaping contractor who's on site every week? There's no one-size-fits-all answer here, and any management company that tells you otherwise isn't being straight with you. Effective vendor compliance isn't a blanket policy. It's a tiered system, and building that system requires experience with how vendor relationships actually work, how insurance markets move, and what your community's real exposure profile looks like. Here's something most boards never find out about their management company until it's already causing a problem. Some management companies, not all, but a growing number, outsource their vendor compliance tracking system to third-party platforms, and those platforms charge vendors a fee, sometimes a few $100s a year, just to be listed in the network and to do business with the communities that the company manages. Think about what that does to your vendor pool. A quality plumber, reliable electrician, a landscaping crew that knows your property. These are professionals running businesses. When they find out there's a recurring fee just to be eligible to submit a proposal to your association, some of them walk. Not because they can't afford it, because they don't need it. The best vendors have plenty of work. They're not going to pay for access to a community that adds friction to getting paid. What your board ends up with is a vendor network filtered down to whoever was willing to pay that fee. That's not always the best vendor for the job. That's the vendor who had no better option. Vendor compliance is management company work. The W-9 collection, the certificate tracking, the renewal follow-up. That's what your management fee is supposed to cover. When a management company offloads that responsibility and passes the costs to your vendor community, your community pays for it in different ways. Fewer bids, less competition, and eventually higher costs. Vendor compliance looks simple from the outside. Collect the paperwork, put it in a folder. But what we've described here is a system with real moving parts, sequencing documentation around dynamic situations, making intelligent decisions about dormant vendor relationships, and making sure the management company you've hired is actually doing this work, not outsourcing it back to your vendors at their expense. If your board is managing this on its own, or if you're not sure how your current management company handles vendor compliance behind the scenes, that's exactly the kind of conversation we have with boards every day. At ManageMax, we know that effective community management is built on transparency and systematic excellence. We provide full-service HOA and condominium management across Southeast Michigan, handling everything from accurate financial reporting to proactive maintenance. Our goal is to reduce the burden on your board while protecting your property values. If you're looking for a partner who values accountability as much as you do, visit us at managemaxproperties.com. Let's build a stronger community together.